We begin this bulletin with breaking news. US President Donald Trump is going to be heading into a historic meeting with Chinese leader Xi Jinping, facing a delicate test, which is projecting strength against America's top adversary without triggering another economic shock on home ground for him. This high-stakes encounter, the first between the two men in more than 6 years, comes after months of tariff threats, tariffs, escalating rhetoric that have rattled global markets and also strained global supply chains. And at a moment when Trump is eager to prove that his economic nationalism can still deliver concrete wins. In fact, Trump has just posted on Truth Social just a few moments ago, where Trump says that he is looking forward to meeting the president of China, and he has called themselves the G2. Priyanka Deo's been tracking the latest developments for us. She joins us with a quick update at the moment. Priyanka, the latest coming in on Truth Social from the US president. Tell us about the mood inside the Trump camp ahead of this crucial meeting.
Well, it is a high-stakes meeting for sure.
Indeed.
Between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. And it holds major global implications, especially for India. Though the United States and China have not yet finalized a trade deal, the fact that talks are proceeding, Trump has sort of put on his social media that it's positive, it signals a significant shift in global strategic dynamics. Meanwhile, the proposed US-India trade agreement remains ongoing and unresolved. Nobody knows where it's at. For India, this is a moment of both promise and pressure. On one hand, the possibility of a US-China de-escalation in South Korea reduces geopolitical friction that elevated India's strategic importance for the United States. So if Washington and Beijing draw closer right after today's meeting, New Delhi may need to sharpen its value proposition and actually assert its role beyond simply being a partner of convenience. But on the other hand, the approaching US-China deal or talks today may open fresh corridors of opportunity for India as well. So even if a pact isn't yet signed, the mere momentum of de-risking supply chains, diversifying technology partnerships, hedging critical minerals, it offers India a window. So as the US and global companies look for stable alternatives, India's large market versus China's, its democratic system, China doesn't have one, and its global supply chain potential, which China also doesn't have, still positions it favorably. So the key for India here, I think Modi will be eagerly watching what happens at this G2 that's about to happen. Modi will definitely try to balance two structural dynamics, and that's maintaining India's strategic autonomy while simultaneously stepping up economic and strategic ties for the US-India corridor.
Meanwhile, Priyanka, tell us about the tone coming in from the Chinese state media this morning. Is it confrontational, or would you say it's fairly conciliatory?
I would say that it is fairly conciliatory. If you notice, the talks aren't happening in China, nor are they happening in the United States. They're happening in Busan. Both leaders had to travel to get over there, so that kind of gives way that both are willing to compromise and come to the table. And Trump, he's known for his blunt honesty on his social media. So if he's saying that he's positive about it, it probably means that both are ready to come to the table, to come to sort of at least somewhat of a compromise.
You know, at this point, many are skeptical of real tangible outcomes. But tell us, is there any real appetite in Beijing for a new phase to trade understanding, or would you say they're simply waiting Trump out?
Well, China it struggles with its own economy as well as its age demographics. They're dealing with an aging population. It is mainly manufacturing over there. That's what drives their economy. So they are heavily dependent on the US in terms of manufacturing. So therefore, I feel that China is signaling willingness to engage, but as usual, as China goes on its own terms and not rushing into major concessions as we've seen. So we'll see what happens today. I think that there will be some sort of agreement or compromise or something or the other, mainly from China's side to the US.
You've got your ear to the ground, meanwhile, Priyanka. Tell us, how much pressure is Donald Trump under domestically, given criticism from the opposition as well on his tariff strategy?
I think that, he got into tariffs so quickly with so many countries at the same time. That was the main point of disagreement, especially from his opposition. But at this point, there's so many deals that he's trying to make and so many negotiations with so many countries happening at the same time that what can the opposition do but just wait and watch? So he is under pressure, but I think the United States knows, and the countries that he's dealing with, they know that the negotiation strategy was basically to get them on the table, putting pressure of tariffs on them to get them to talk right away. The outcome of the negotiations is another thing, but I feel that Donald Trump is looking for a win over here. I think it is going to come in US's favor, but Beijing will likely test US earnestness and commitment. And the good news is for the US and for Donald Trump that China is signaling readiness to move. As you said, this is their first meeting after years. Both of them had traveled to Busan to meet. So I feel that China may want some sort of reciprocation, of course, but they may be willing to, as I said before, compromise. So it may be a win here for Donald Trump.
So at this point, is it fair to say that US officials are generally confident of a breakthrough or simply trying to contain expectations?
I think that they are confident of a breakthrough. Like I said, China is very heavily dependent on the US in terms of economics. I feel that if they're talking about tariffs especially, I feel the US has a bit more leverage than China in this case because China hasn't diversified much economic-wise. They do have a lot of power. They do have a lot of leverage in terms of geopolitics. But like I said, China is always afraid of more stronger US-India ties. So I feel that the US will actually leverage geopolitics as well to get them to kind of compromise and come to the table. So I do feel the US has one step up in this negotiation game.
Right. And Priyanka, any word on Trump's possible TikTok deal announcement? And what kind of signal that may send to Beijing?
We're all waiting and watching, especially all of the TikTok influencers. TikTok actually impacts the economy. It's a huge boost to revenues. So I feel that Trump has actually taken the ownership of TikTok has changed. So I feel that there's no news yet, but we're all waiting and watching for that too. And I used to be a social media influencer as well and still am. So I feel that, I'm eagerly awaiting what the news is, but no new news as of yet for TikTok.
Right, we'll be keeping a close eye on the latest developments. Priyanka, for our viewers just tuning in, take us to the top agenda as the two superpowers are expected to just sit together in a few moments from now. Priyanka, am I audible to you?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Right, perfect.
Yeah.
For our viewers just tuning in, if you could just take us through the agenda for the day, the plan of action.
Well, today there's a very high-stakes meeting between President Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping in Busan, and it holds major global implications, especially for India. India will be eagerly watching this, though the United States and China have not yet finalized any sort of trade deal or made a final pact, the fact that talks are proceeding, and as Trump pointed out on his social media, positively, it signals a significant shift in sort of global strategic dynamics. So meanwhile, the proposed US-India trade agreement remains ongoing and unresolved. So for India, this is a moment of both promise and pressure. The meeting is about to happen in just a few minutes. On the other hand, the possibility of a US-China de-escalation today, it reduces the very geopolitical friction that elevated India's strategic importance to the United States. So if Washington and Beijing draw closer after today's talks, New Delhi may need to sharpen its value proposition. It may need to strategize and assert its role beyond simply being a partner of convenience or a partner just to counter China geopolitically. And on the other hand, the approaching US-China deal, if it is finalized today, Trump hinted at it on his social media, it may open up fresh corridors of opportunity.
I sincerely apologize. I'm interrupting you, Priyanka. We have live visuals coming in at the moment. US President Donald Trump and Chinese leader Xi Jinping are set to meet today in a high-stakes summit, as my colleague Priyanka Deo is reporting as well. Officials on both sides say that they are optimistic of the outcomes of this crucial meeting. In fact, earlier this week, they had said that they had reached a consensus to address respective concerns too. At the moment, what you see on your screens are live visuals coming in. We are expecting Xi Jinping to appear shortly. But a crucial meeting lined up between the US president and the Chinese president amid their intensified tariff war. It's the first meeting in 6 years. Trump, ahead of their meeting, has expressed optimism and said he's looking forward to meeting Xi Jinping. In fact, he's teased the meeting and called themselves the G2 as well. The US president has tagged himself and Xi Jinping the G2. Priyanka Deo still with us at the moment. Priyanka, take us through the tone coming in from Trump's camp as well as China this morning ahead of this crucial meeting.
Well, China has officially confirmed that Xi will meet Trump in Busan. He's expected to arrive at any moment. But this signals in-depth communications on strategic as well as long-term issues. So it's not just about trade talks today. So the meeting, the G2 summit, if you can call it that, is expected to focus on not only trade tensions, which includes tariffs, rare earth export controls, as well as investment restrictions between the US and China. But it's also supposed to signal maybe longstanding geopolitical issues that the US and China have had. So they might talk about that as well. In parallel, Trump was also presented a golden crown by the South Korean president during his visit as part of a broader investment and trade talks between the US and South Korea ahead of the China meeting. So this matters because this meeting comes at a moment when the US-China trade war threatens global supply chains and tech markets. The Busan summit is seen as high stakes, but also as an opportunity to stabilize long-term frictions. And for countries like India, this summit is consequential because it may reshape how US and China engage economically as well as geopolitically, as well as strategically and economically, potentially altering India's role, dare I say, reducing it in terms of global trade and diplomacy. So I'm sure Modi is watching and New Delhi has to act fast if the talks go well.
Indeed. Meanwhile, Priyanka, take us through the red lines on both sides. Does Trump have any red lines heading into this crucial meeting? And the same for Xi Jinping.
I would say that yes, both sides do have red lines, right? Trump has to appease his base. He's under a lot of pressure in the US in terms of, let's get a win over here. Have any of the trade deals with any of the major countries gone through? But according to Chinese official statements, China has also identified four to five major red lines for its relations with the US. Number one is Taiwan, right? China regards the Taiwan question as non-negotiable and sees U.S. support for Taiwan independence as a direct violation. Number two, China's political system. It's got a poor record of democracy and human rights narratives. China rejects external attempts to challenge its one-party socialist system. Number three is China's development rights, its economic growth path. China is a country that insists that the U.S. must not seek to contain its economic development or impose unfair trade. And there have been reports that Beijing will strictly counter Trump in terms of unfair trade. And number four is, of course, its governance model. China's basically its system and its path. It demands that the U.S. respect its system and not attempt to undermine it or treat it as inferior. So those are China's sort of red lines. In short, China is signaling that while cooperation is possible, that's why she has gone all the way over there, certain domains like Taiwan, system legitimacy, development autonomy are off limits. So breaching them invites a hard reaction.
Indeed. Meanwhile, tell us about whether officials in the US are genuinely confident of a breakthrough, or are they trying to contain expectations as we speak?
Well, the U.S. is under pressure too. While they always maintain that they are very, very confident, Trump does a great job of that, at least asserting confidence. There are some, as you said, red lines for the U.S. as well, right? So I think number one is technology export controls, especially semiconductor dominance. The U.S. insists on restricting China's access to advanced chips and AI tools, seeing them as strategic assets, where China asserts that you can't contain our economic development. Number two is, of course, tariffs and trade deficits, supply chain decoupling, I guess you can say. The U.S. demands fairer trade, more Chinese purchases of U.S. goods, and firm steps against unfair subsidies. So if you go to a store over here, everything, like if you go to a Walmart or a Target over here, almost everything will be made in China, but you don't see that in China. So a failure sort of triggers tariff threats. Number three is, of course, rare earths and critical minerals access, which has been in mainstream media articles and on NDTV as well. With China controlling much of that supply chain, the U.S. views exclusion or export restrictions as unacceptable. And of course, Taiwan for the U.S. as well, right? In terms of Indo-Pacific alliances. So while more flexible, the U.S. treats its commitments, for example, arms sales to Taiwan, partner alliances like the Quad, as very serious. The U.S. stepping back on Taiwan, especially today, would be a major shift. So there's pressure on both sides for sure. And on the record, both
Priyanka,
countries...
I sincerely apologize. I'm interrupting you again. As we can see, the Chinese president has arrived in South Korea. We can see he is descending off his plane at the moment, and he will be heading into a crucial meeting with Donald Trump, a historic meeting, facing a delicate test. In fact, even for Trump, it's more than optics. Xi Jinping has touched down in South Korea ahead of his meeting with Trump. All eyes are on the key developments emerging from Busan in South Korea. The US president heads into this historic meeting with the Chinese leader, facing a test of projecting strength against America's top adversary without triggering another economic shock at home for him. Laura Westbrook joins us with the latest from South Korea.
This is US President Donald Trump's first meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping since he began his second term in office, and their first meeting in person since 2019. Now, negotiators from both sides say a framework has been agreed leading up to the meeting, and Donald Trump has projected optimism ahead of the meeting, saying he thinks it would yield a great outcome for the world. And Trump has also indicated that the agreement could include lowering 20% tariffs on Chinese goods that are related to the drug fentanyl. High on the agenda will be rare earths. China went into these talks by leveraging its chokehold on the supply of the critical minerals, announcing it was expanding its restrictions on the exports of rare earths. Beijing said that was a response to the US putting Chinese groups on a trade blacklist. And Donald Trump had threatened to slap an additional 100% tariffs on Chinese imports from November 1st in retaliation. But US Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, has said that that was effectively off the table after this weekend's talks. Now, China dominates the global supply of rare earths, which are used in everything from smartphones to EVs to fighter jets and drones. The US wants more access to rare earths from China. Donald Trump will also want to finalize a deal on TikTok, transferring it to US ownership. He will also be hoping for the Chinese to buy soybeans again, easing the pain on American farmers, a key support base of Trump's. Now, China will be looking for access to advanced computer chips, those fentanyl tariffs removed, and adjustment to port fees. Analysts say the meeting is a chance to reset the relationship and possibly secure a visit by Donald Trump to visit China next year.
Priyanka, just focusing on tech now, semiconductors, rare earths and artificial intelligence. Is tech supremacy still the silent war beneath this diplomatic engagement that's coming up?
To answer your question, yes, the big question here is that can Trump strike a deal with Xi? And some enabling factors are definitely technology. But the good news is that both sides show an interest in reducing tension and stabilizing trade, labor, technology flows. Trump, in fact, has publicly expressed optimism about reaching a tech deal, a sort of fantastic deal in terms of trade and tech with China. China has also signaled its willingness to compromise. So China may be willing today to make concessions in areas like rare earth export controls and technology processing in exchange for U.S. tariff relief or investment. But with that being said, there are major hurdles. The core issues are open access to Chinese markets, intellectual property, state subsidies, strategic tech. These are deeply structural things and things that take longer than a few hours to work out. So China views many of these as part of its development model. And Trump must satisfy business constituencies back at home, manufacturing workers, farmers, while also confronting critics in his own party and opposition who view any deal with suspicion. So it's time and verification here. Implementation of any deal would require complex mechanisms, monitoring, and trust, which has been low historically with China for sure.